Hi, I'm Sacha King from 221 Mental Health Charity, and today we're going to be talking about having focused and non-judgmental conversations with young people. I'm a social worker and the managing director here, and I'm going to take you through a few skills that will help you engage that young person in these conversations. The things that we're going to go through today is talking about listening and active listening skills that help that young person feel connected and heard. We're also going to talk a little bit about avoiding bias, as we all interpret the world through our own experiences and being aware of what our biases are. And we're going to talk about a couple different ways to encourage a young person to expand on what they're saying through affirmation statements and reflection statements. These are statements that help the young person to feel heard and to continue that conversation. First thing we need to practice is listening, and listening is a skill that is really hard. Active listening is exhausting. What's the main thing that gets in the way of us active listening?
Hearing.
Hearing, yep. And what's the main thing that stops us? It's going on right now in this room. Confused? Distractions, not paying attention, yeah. And what the thing is, our own thoughts are the biggest distraction. It's not people walking past, it's not the environment, it's our own thoughts saying like, what's the next question I'm going to ask? Am I doing the right thing? Do they like me? Is this a right conversation? Is this comfortable? Do I have the right body language? Our own thoughts get in the way all the time of meaningful conversations. It also can be quite hard and exhausting just to maintain your attention, especially if you've got your own stresses going on or you're stressed for time and things like that. It's important just to recognise that our thoughts do get in the way of us listening, and sometimes they help us or they stop us from being unbiased. Because we interpret everything that people say, and we quite often imagine things that people say. So we're going to do one activity first. I'm going to get you to do a quick visualisation. So I want you to either, look at the ground or close your eyes, and just for 30 seconds I'm going to get you to visualise something. So just really quickly. So I want you to visualise a beach. It's a beautiful beach, it's a really calm day, and it's a really just nice white sand, blue ocean. On the beach there is a couple, and the couple's walking down the beach. It's a clear blue sky, and there's a couple of birds in the sky. The people walking down the beach, they seem peaceful, and they have a dog as well. The dog is quite an energetic dog, and it's running around. And the people, they have a frisbee. They're throwing the frisbee to the dog's catching it and bringing it back to them. It's just a nice day. Once you have that picture and that image in your head, I'll get you come back to the room. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you a few things about the thing that you visualise. Did anyone visualise a beach that they've been to before? Yes. Yeah? Oh, most of the room did, yeah. Did anyone visualise, actually what perspective were you seeing it from? Like where? You were watching it? Yeah. Yeah. And were you there or were you not there? Like were you standing on the beach or were you just seeing it like as a different world?
On the beach.
You were on the beach, yep. Where else were people?
Having a day off and then walking down there with my husband.
Ah, you and your husband were walking on the beach as well, yeah. Where else were people? Anyone see it from a bird's eye view or a disconnected view? Everyone was on the beach?
I was like watching myself.
Okay. Okay, yep. Watching yourself watch it, yep. Where were you?
I was just seeing it as a scene.
As a scene, yep. Yeah. So there's a few things here. Oh, so what type of dog was it? Or what did the dog look like?
There were little dogs.
Little dogs? Oh, yeah.
They're black.
Yeah. Yeah. What colour was the frisbee? Yeah. All right, so you can see you all visualise something different, which is absolutely correct. But when you're visualizing that, you're actually interpreting it with what was norm for you, things that you've seen before, how your life, has taught you to know these things. So you're interpreting it in your own way from your own experiences. So that's fine. But if someone's telling you a story, we do this all the time, and we fill in the gaps that they don't tell us with our own knowns. Because I didn't tell you what the people looked like. Did anyone imagine 2 males or 2 females?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Did most people imagine a male and a female? So I didn't tell you what the people looked like, what beach to go to, what the dog looked like, what frisbee it was, anything like that. You filled them with your own knowns, which is generally fine. We just need to be aware of it, because sometimes we assume a picture that is nothing like what the young person is telling us. So make sure you slow it down and you try not to visualize too many gaps, because those gaps are really good points of conversation. Hey, describe the beach to me. Tell me about it. Or what type of dog was it running past? And it's not only is it getting them to describe and stopping you from having sort of your bias in understanding the situation, it's also having that person to say, hey, they want to hear about this story. They want me to describe it, and it's making them feel really listened to. The other thing just to quickly mention is that if you're working with young people or any people who have a lot of trauma and they tell you stories of trauma, if you imagine that really personally, it's really not very good for your mind. It will go into your own memories because you're visualizing it like you're standing there, like you're standing in a room watching it happen. You're standing on the beach next to this trauma. So it's actually becoming your own visual memory. So a really good thing to do if that happens to you and you get quite emotively connected, or you find that you're visualizing things quite personally, is that you could either change your perspective to a disconnected one, like you said you're seeing a scene, like a scene from a movie or something like that. You could do it from a bird's eye view if you're visualizing, or you could put it like in a TV screen, like you're sitting on the couch and you're watching the TV and that's happening, just so you have an element of disconnect from that trauma, because otherwise you're going to feel quite full of stories and emotions. And also it leads to burnout as well. So just a little tip for all of you to look after your minds, and especially if you made that quite personal. If you were in that scene, if your dog was in that scene, if someone you knew was in that scene, if the beach was known to you in the scene, you probably do personalise things a little bit. So just look after yourselves. Yeah, we do need to listen, but also when we're in a conversation and we want to learn about someone, let's ask questions to actually learn about them. Let's ask, tell me more about that, or explain that, or use statements to keep them talking. So things like, oh, so you told me you were here, so you talked about this, or I hear that you're struggling between this and this. So really using statements that are going to help that person expand and make them feel listened to, because quite often people do want to keep talking, but we quite often don't let them, because we have our own comparison, or we have an idea, or we have an opinion, or we have a great way to solve all their problems. So we need to actually be aware that we do that all the time. So as humans, we love problem solving. We love it. We don't want any problems. We don't want any unknowns. Unknowns means it's maybe dangerous. Unknowns means I don't have any answers. It feels uncomfortable to us. So if someone has a problem, naturally, instinctively, we try and solve it, rather than letting them continue to explain what's going on for them, and letting them having the skills and the ability to problem solve it themselves and talk it through. So that's what we want to practice, is having that person who we're talking to really guide the conversation. We can do that through a couple of statements. So we can use these reflection statements and affirmation statements. We're going to do some funneling questioning a bit later as well. So there's lots of different ways. So this one is a really big part of motivational interviewing. These are statements, what we kind of summarise a little bit back to that person, what they've said. Not in a way of making a summary of it, just making a quick reflection. So I'm going to show you some ideas of reflection statements and affirmation statements, and we're going to have a little practice of these. So reflection statement help you understand what the young person is thinking or feeling, and they also give the young person an opportunity to clarify or expand on it. So they might sound like, I hear you say you're worried about making change. You seem a little down today and said you've had a hard week. You say you're weighing up the pros and cons. Is that correct? You expressed your need for support in this and don't feel like anyone understands. You have these things constantly on your mind and are feeling stressed about this situation. Can you see? It's a statement of what they've said, but once you say that, they're like, hey, yeah, I was feeling that. I'm going to tell you more about it. Hey, yeah, that is similar. Or actually, no, I wasn't feeling stressed this week or down this week. I actually was just had a lot on my mind and I couldn't manage my emotions. You know, it's really an opportunity for them to expand or clarify. Affirmations statements help the person's motivation through recognizing some of their strengths. So it really enhances self-esteem, but also that self-efficacy. So I can do this, or I do believe that I have the skills to do this. So we normally pick up a strength, but you don't want to say to that young person like, you're awesome, you can do this, because they won't believe it. Young people don't just believe in way too positive statements. We need to be realistic statements. You're really mature to speak to me about this. I think this shows you would be able to explain this to your family or a caseworker or someone else in your life. You've already taken the first step and I'm really proud of you. If that's your sort of relationship that you could say you're proud of that young person. And in many of your roles, sort of saying that I'm proud of you, or that was mature, or that was the first step, or things like that can be really nice statements to make. I know you're a good person and able to work out what is going to be the best for you. So recognising a little bit of some of the decisions that they've made. Thanks for sharing. Not many people your age would be able to talk honestly like you are. So that honesty is a big one. I'm really impressed with the steps you've taken so far. You've managed a lot in your life and have a lot of resilience. So you can see really strong strengths that are recognised in those statements without it being too sort of like la-di-da, happy world, because the young people really need to have things that feel honest from you, they feel organic coming from you, and they match with your normal interaction with that young person as well. You might use a reflective and an affirmation statement in one sentence. Well, we're just having a chat with this group is they should be really short. They shouldn't be like very long, because when they're longer, it feels like you're summarising it or you're finishing that sentence. If it's really short, that's when it should be unfinished, because they want to then expand on that sentence. So yeah, should feel really short, should be really sharp, should just have one point that you want to get across, or one thing that you not want to get across, one thing that you've noticed that they've said as a part of that statement. So keep it short. If you're finding it's too long, probably your first few words of it were perfect. So yeah, keep it short, keep it sharp. Make it to a point where they're going to expand on it. And practice it, because if we do go to the summary, that person's not going to explain the rest of their story that they're telling you or the rest of their emotions. But good job, everyone. Good work writing those. And I could see in some groups that there were some people really good at reflective and some people really good at affirmation. And that's just generally how we speak. We're all going to have our strengths of which ones are easier for us. I hope you learnt some new skills about having focused and non-judgmental conversations with young people. These skills will really help you focus the conversation on eliciting change for that young person, and also make that young person feel heard and respected. From this section, you can fill out 2 sections on your worksheet. The first section I want you to do is your reflection statements. These are statements that summarise a tiny bit of what someone says. They should be really short and concise and encourage that young person to keep talking. You can also do 3 affirmation statements that would work for the young people that you work with. I don't want them to be super positive. They need to be realistic to the situation and for the young person to connect with. They should have a strength in them, but also be very short and concise so the young person can expand on them. Once following those statements, you can find that young person feels really encouraged and empowered to continue these conversations.